So can you see the presentation now?
Yes, yes.
Yes, very good. Yeah, I just watched part of the last presentation on YouTube. That was interesting. Also, I saw that you have a very nice location and weather. We actually have about 20 degrees in Denmark also, so we have a little bit of Indian summer. But I will tell you something about the. Yeah, it's one thing. How long time do I have for the presentation? Still half an hour, or should I squeeze a little bit?
I think around 30 minutes, including questions, would be great.
Yeah, yes, no problem. But I will explain what's happening regarding digital construction and BIM in Denmark, which is this rather small country to the north. Having nice weather now, but can be not that cold actually, but a little bit gray and rainy during the last part of the year. And maybe that's why we also need facilities and have some construction work going on. It's a very small country, about 5 million people, and the largest city is Copenhagen, something like about 1 million. And of course, this has impact when you also talk about this, about digitalization and if it's possible to involve the entire industry and things like that. But as mentioned in the other presentation, that there has been activities in the Nordic countries, and I will focus on the project and what has happened since the start in Denmark for this. I will not claim that we were the first. I think the Finns have had a much more controlled strategy towards this long before we looked into this. But something has definitely happened in Denmark. So the main purpose of this presentation is to say kind of did these public requirements actually have any impact? But if you're heading and you want to maybe do something by mandating requirements, then it could also be interesting for the audience or some of the listening, kind of would it have any impact on me and from a business perspective. And what we have seen in Denmark is it definitely has had some impact, but to come with one of the conclusions quite early, there haven't been a big shift, as some were afraid that kind of there would be a totally changed industry, that small companies would not survive. We still have a mix of companies. Yeah, I've already been introduced with all my position and things like that, and that was maybe too much, but I will inform a little bit about myself here because I'm you can say kind of whether I'm informed or I'm biased. I've been working with this IT in construction for decades. I was part of the working group that set up the program in Denmark before, kind of in 2002, and then was part of some of the developing some of the requirements which took place from 2003-4 until 2007, and then I've been executing projects compliant to these requirements, and also been part of a evaluation within of some of the successful, mostly that has been unsuccessful projects also, but some of the successful projects. And then I added that maybe I have a more broad background now. I've been doing some MBA, but the point back in about 2000 was that the construction industry in Denmark was suffering. Had somebody complained, maybe this is more or less unfortunately a global problem, that we have a problem with the lack of increasing productivity, the cost overrun, delays, and things like that. And IT was seen as something that could do something. So the point was here to see kind of, or the interested group here was kind of the kind of entire Danish construction industry, and then one of the main point was to improve efficiency. And there was identified some areas what that could be looked into, and one was kind of focused on the benefits, was called kind of best in building or best in construction, try to identify the existing ways that were best, and also try to measure the benefits. And at the beginning it was too early to do it. Then there was something about clients' requirements, and it should help the client to perform better, and also come up with some more generic general requirements. Technology was definitely an important part of this. So it was about building knowledge about which technology that should be used to demonstrate it and to come up with some common solutions. And there was set up a program to the right. So there was something like some 4 million euros or something like that. Not that big compared to many other projects. One thing that was interesting about this project was set up as a joint effort between the state or authorities, professional associations, and companies, and there was more consortiums, including always organization from private and public in this bidding process. And the idea at the beginning was there was an export that saw some benefits. They influenced the politicians as they said, yes, we're going to have this, and we're doing this by demanding our state clients to ask for this. So they will demand designers to use or to deliver data in specific formats and have to do some sharing data and so forth. And then the contractors, they should have the ability at least to use it. And manufacturers could also provide some information, and then this information would go back to the client and would be using open formats to do that. And there was quite early, like some other countries have made supporting open formats. So that was mainly focused on the IFC, the Industrial Foundation classes from Bildungsmarkt. So that was the kind of the strategy, and that seemed to, at that point, to be a reasonable way to implement it. So what happened in 2007? There were some requirements made, and it was for the state clients, mainly for the large projects, and the process should be there should be somebody appointed from the client to push this, and there was a requirement for OpenBIM. There was a requirement for using a Danish classification system based on some referencing techniques coming more from system engineering, and then Project Web is kind of a common data environment. You have a server, you can share data, and then the quantity should be taken off, and it was mandatory to use this. And then in 2010, the requirements were updated, so it was still the state that was the in focus. Most likely because I think the politician in government was afraid that the municipalities would demand to be compensated if they should put up some requirements, because they would claim that this would be making projects more expensive, so they had to be compensated. So I think that was the main reason for why not only involved state clients at the beginning that could be controlled by the government. The threshold was lowered, so in the beginning it was about 3 million euros, and now it was more or less all projects, and still requirement for OpenBIM, but it was a change that it should not be using this rather complicated classification system, but should use a classification system that was ISO compliant. Still, the project webs were required, and then the quantity takeoff, there was a change because it might be possible to exchange the requirement or the exchange the quantities, but we were lacking of standards, and there was a kind of a failure, as I see it, because there was made some ways to communicate the standards, but not how you should measure. So that ended up being kind of a problem, and actually a report is being made now, kind of 10 years later, how to move forward with this, how to measure quantities from models and for which purposes and so forth. In 2013, it was updated. The state now has so much confidence that this was benefiting and not making projects more expensive. So now it became mandatory for regions owns a hospital, but also the municipalities and social housing. So it's kind of all public projects in Denmark, and still kind of for more or less for all projects. Still use ISO classification, but also need some structure and more introducing kind of the common data environment. And still the quantity takeoff has been optional, mainly due to the reason that we're not having clear rules. And we have some more rules now, but it's not really supported by tools to do the quantity takeoff. So that's a bottleneck we have. I'll see if I can shift. So do you see my web browser now? Okay, I hope. But this is one of the state clients. So this is a list of some projects that's being carried on. Of course, now it's for many years. So it's universities, it's court, it's railway building for the railway authorities, for again a lot for different type of universities, some special schools, museums, and police stations, again a court, and so there are a number of projects, and in general kind of all university building that has been mandated. And for the public or for the regions, all the major hospitals, we have had a process in Denmark where they want to change, replace a number of the existing hospitals with new kind of super hospitals, and there has been work quite well. So it's fairly well implemented by now. And we are a small country, so that might also make it more easy. But to my knowledge, we were the first country in the world to put up public requirements, kind of from a legal point of view. There's been other countries doing this more voluntarily, but this was the first by kind of mandating by law. Then, if we look at what's expected or some hoped, well, we had not that high speed until 2007, but then we have these requirements, and then everything should just explode. At least that was the expected by some people. But if you look at the status, the state has been rather slow start. They were not really that committed, but now it's 80 or 5 or 100 projects. They had some resources to establish competence to look into this. If we look at the regions, they have these large hospital projects, and they also have the resources to establish some competences within this area. Within municipalities, we have about 100 municipalities in Denmark, and so they're not that small, but they definitely not are specialists in this field. So that can be it's been more difficult to implement it there, and they have been lacking competence. Social housing has been mostly retrofitting, and they also are struggling with the lack of competences. But on the other hand, there has also been very successful implementation of using BIM, and especially for having more structured systems. So when they have to do a refurbishment, they really know something about the quantities, and they put it off for public bidding, and the cost for retrofitting apartments and things like that has been going down. Arto Kiviniemi, a professor from Finland, also have a background in Finland, working as an architect and one of the people pushing for open standards, definitely in years ago, and also sharing BuildingSmart at some point. He said back then, in around 2007, a little bit later, that there should be a more coordinated effort and more research added to develop the digital infrastructure. It will be a more painful shift and take longer before the gain can be harvested if this is not being addressed. And I think that this is exactly what has happened. We had definitely some acceleration after 2007, but not a big shift, not an explosion coming from the implementation of these requirements. So I think about the strategy, looking back, there are something that could be been done different. It's okay that the experts are telling the politicians, but the client were not really committed, so they were not pushing it hard. They got some data, they were supposed to use them, but they're actually not using that much. One of the reasons is that they are more interested in construction than actually the cost for operation management is taken care of by the tenants. So we have a problem that we have we're lacking stakeholders actually to implement this change. And again, also community was right. So the clients, they were not convinced about the benefits, so they weren't really committed. One of the major organizations, they hired just a graduate student to lead this. The person most likely had some skills in digitalization, but was lacking support from management. I think there was lack of training staff. There was lacking of enforcing the requirements, and also the which is part of the business model, but they were actually lack of reuse because they're not that interested in facility management. I think if we look at to get clients more on board, I think that, in Norway, the public aid clients have been more engaged and been asking for this without being mandated by law, and this about mandating is something I think you should consider if you're looking into this. If it's possible to do by the carrots rather than the demands, it's worthwhile considering. And I think the Danes, like many other people, dislike to be told what to do. So if you can find some good reason for doing this, it could be good. But still, there has to be some kind of structure to be successful, because if each project are handled individually, that's also causing a problem. We had two generic specifications, or there was something missing. For instance, with the quantities takeoff, so we should make quantity takeoff, but it was not specified exactly how that should be done. That caused some problems. There was lacking some other specifications, and they didn't want to make the legal stuff too specific, because then it had to be changed, and that's difficult to have to go to the government. But it ended up being too generic, and I know also that in Romania you are being looking at some of the ISO standard in this field, so that could be something that you can benefit from today. So that was at least a lesson learned from Denmark. Definitely the building information modeling and using ICT has been accepted by the industry, and the clients were afraid that this would increase the cost, but that haven't been the case. So was one of the reasons why the municipalities was forced to implement this as well, because it was demonstrated that they were not having additional cost. And as I said at the beginning, we still have small and large companies in business, but of course it has some impact for some companies, but we haven't seen a big shift of companies that has been gone bankrupt due to digitalization. Something that probably us looking from a technology point of view, that we're not aware of the robustness. If you want to have something that works, especially between parties, it has to be you have to be aware of making it robust. So sometimes you have not configured the tools as you're supposed to do. Maybe you are lacking skills among the people using this. maybe they are not modeling as required. Maybe you're not naming your properties as specified. Maybe you're not modeling to the level of detail that you have agreed on. You might be lacking skills to export, and you might be lacking skills of importing. And especially if the requirements are not, if they are not specific, then there's a risk that there will be several parts of this chain that will have some parts will not be really strong connected, and then it will add up being a less successful, might not be a disaster, but it might not be as successful as you hope for. And I think we had from our project, definitely we need some people who are pushing for the technology, because this is about technology, but there was a lack of interaction between people with focus on technology and for those who are actually going to use this and benefit from it. And I think especially for some of the public clients in Denmark, there's a problem that one of these clients is their main purpose is to build building and to rent it to tenants that are public organization, and often they have a monopoly, and they can kind of more or less just dictate the rent, and it's the tenant that will have to take care of operational maintenance. So there's no real incentive for the client to collect data, to have data up to date, make sure it's easy to operate and so forth, because it's actually not their responsibility. So I think that was a big area we should be more aware of. But if we look at what has happened, this is, sorry, it's in Danish, but I'll just go through it quite fast. There was a survey made in 2018 that's just been done in 2020, and the result will be tomorrow, but unfortunately for today's conference, but the numbers should be about the same. But if you look here at the dark blue and light blue, you will see it's about 75%. And that is when people in the industry is asked about if they experience requirements for digital solutions or digital handover, both in public building, but also in private building, in commercial buildings, and both for buildings and for infrastructure projects. There are some differences. The top one for 65 is kind of in for public projects. It's they will always see it, whereas 30% they will often see it. But as I said, if you look at the blue ones, it's actually about 75% of all projects that clients are requiring some kind of digital delivery. So this has become the standard procedure in Denmark. Kind of two more here. One is if you look at the most significant gains from the digital development, and I've been told that it's the same for this year as in the past. And the three top ones is better quality, fewer mistakes, it's more efficient processes, and then it's better external collaboration. Yeah, these are the three top ones, and then there are kind of internal collaboration, reducing cost, and then there are some other that are lower, but only 3% of those are said that they have no gains at all. So better quality, efficient processes, and better external collaboration. If you look at the shortcomings or the challenges, we see here that it's and this is definitely not unique for Denmark, but it's, the top one is actually not so much related to the technology, but that of a digital culture. to see digital data as kind of where you store information, how you access this is kind of where you look for everything. And some of these are somehow related. It easily also moves into number two, which is lack of digital competences. Are people able to use the tool? And you see that it's number two, so it's high at the list. And then it's ways of collaborating. This in the industry is causing some issues still. Kind of, are you willing to share data? Are you benefiting from the sharing data? Are you or are you kind of punished if you're sharing data and you have something which is not being addressed and they are shared and so forth? Some of the other ones is kind of too large investments, lack of standards and so forth, but it's actually the cultural aspect that seems to be at the top one here as the main challenges. So we'll see also, I haven't brought the numbers here, but we have seen an increase. According to some numbers, we are actually having better productivity than we used to have, and also some of the countries that we have where we compare with. Another lesson learned was that it was too early to look for this best in buildings or best in construction. This should be done later. So kind of a negative one. About the awareness of BIM and open BIM is high because being mandated. There's still an issue, kind of who should pay for this development. Is the client who's benefiting most from this, or somebody else? And there's not really found a good solution for that. There's been made a few reports about the financial economical benefits, and in some areas it has showed that it's possible to benefit from this, but it's not in all areas that is seen as significant. So the conclusion is BIM adoption is high, and I think that the public requirements has helped to get the industry to be aware of this. Looking back, as I said, we should need more commitment from the stakeholders. And the strategy in Denmark now is to kind of continue down the same road, but have a more focus on implementation. So I think it's gain experience from others, something that you should benefit from, nudging people as much as possible, and then see that can be these requirements can generate a market for that can help your organization to become more competitive. Yeah, so that was my presentation, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Jan. That was a very interesting presentation indeed. There are two ideas that kind of struck me, and I would like you to comment a little bit on those if you can in your presentation. You said at the beginning that it didn't really change industry that much, and contrary to popular and initial fears, small companies have survived. Would you mind expanding a little bit with one idea or two on that? And the other aspect is, you mentioned in your presentation that you performed academic evaluation of the economic consequences of the requirements. When you showed us the challenges and the benefits of the evolutions, of the digital evolutions, you mentioned collaboration and better quality, but not really the economic aspects. Would you please expand with one idea or two on that particular point?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the questions. I think it's the point is that it's the large company. They were aware that they have to be compliant with these requirements because the public lines are important for large companies. But I think that because it's been taken kind of 10 years before it came to a broader acceptance among the clients and so forth. So it's been quite some time for smaller companies to adjust. And we also see that in some cases, especially for contractors, subcontractors might not be able to do always what is necessary, but then they make an agreement with the main contractor. They will do the work on the construction side, and then the main contractor will take care of, because they still need some local people to do the job, they will take care of fulfilling the requirements from the ICT point of view. But definitely, if we made a survey back in 2007, and I think if you look at the architecture companies, 78% of the companies were kind of against this. But if you look at the number of people and the turnover, then they were more positive. But we have a large number of small companies. But I think the reason why this has been not been causing big changes because there's been rather slow. So it's been some time for companies to adjust. And there's been, as I said, the municipalities, social housing, and all the private clients haven't started to ask these put up with these requirements. So I think it's been there's been some time to adjust, and I think I'm actually also at university that we are pushed for training people for 2 decades in this. So all the students that are coming to companies, at least architecture engineering companies, they have some skills in this field, and especially construction architect in Denmark, which of those are many working in construction companies, I think has helped. But probably the shots I have to continue. The time I think is important. About the economy, well, it's difficult about or most people are unique. Now you want to take, more sustainable aspect into account or reduce energy consumption, and you want to have more advanced stuff. So it's difficult just to compare the financial benefits by reducing cost per square meter. But we're seeing that in one of the projects that was evaluated, the carpenter and the building services, they found a better way to make some of the ventilation system and walls in the building, but they also benefit from plastic text. And so I think they have less than 10% of the plastic they used to have where they had to fix. So I think a lot of this about benefiting from this is to reduce rework and be more efficient. Another example was not kind of shows some of the problems also that the architect was doing something that the engineer could benefit from. So they benefit from getting models from the architect, and they kind of just got them for free, and they should do what they were used to do. So for them, isolated, they benefited from. But in this case, the client actually also benefited from, because the contractor reduced his risk, because he knew that he felt that he was taking a smaller risk in the project, so he lowered the cost for the project. So in this, one of the cases, the client could see that they got lower cost for construction they were used to, because this was better documented. Yeah.
Thank you for your answer. On the first aspect, the positive part about us Eastern European taking our time is that we can benefit, and SMEs can benefit from this time, considering what you just said. And on the second aspect, very interesting points indeed. I assume that better quality has in itself an economic value as well as more predictability on costs. Very interesting. Thank you so much.
We have a question from the audience.
Do we?
Yeah, we've got a question on Facebook. Mr. Jan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Following the translation to Romanian of the ISO standards 19650 part 1 and 2, should the national annex be the next step in the development, or should other documents come first?
Well, it might be difficult for me to answer, but I think there's actually a process now in Denmark where we try to map the ISO standard to the existing national documents we have, because the ISO standard in itself can be difficult to use, but so kind of mapping it to national existing legal documents, specification of services and so forth. I think that's if you want to follow the ISO route, I think it's making guide or national annex is really important, because the ISO standard is probably too abstract to use and will cause a lot of confusion how to be compliant with that. And if you have something that is already can help people to comply, I think that's something you should focus on.
Thank you. Careful with not making the national annex as generic as the ISO standards.
Yes.
Thank you so much.